Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Icons, Rock Stars, and Innovators, presented to you from the Advertising Club of New York in partnership with my team, Mixed Company Podcast. And as you know, I am the co host and co producer of Mixed Company, Kai Devereaux Lawson. And I am actually here with one of our first guests on the podcast, Miss TASHA Gilroy. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me,
You're
Kai.
so welcome. Just so you guys know, Tasha and I go so way back to when I first started in the industry. She's been my mentor and also kind of kept me out of trouble a couple times. So, Tasha, thank you so much for joining us. I
Thank you
really
so much for
appreciate you being
having
here.
me. I'm so glad to be here and to be a part of this. It's amazing.
Great. So, as you know, we're talking a little bit about the golden era of
Right.
Black advertising. So, I'm going to end up asking you some questions about your perspective of that era. But
Okay.
before we get to know about the history of other people, we want to know a little bit about you and your journey into advertising. Can you share some of that with us?
Absolutely. So I came into advertising by accident. I kind of had no idea about the industry, didn't pursue it. I actually applied for a position as a coordinator for the Learning and Inclusion and Diversity Department at Y&R. And coming into the position, I kind of was split between both groups where I was involved with training, but also involved in helping to build some of the programs. And so being in the role and morphing and learning and expanding on what we were doing at the agency is kind of how I landed in the position. So basically, I grew up in the job.
Oh my goodness. It's
Yeah.
amazing to hear how people kind of grew up in the job, and you've been here long enough to help, mentor quite a few people in this industry. So it's exciting to hear your perspective. One of the things that we're talking about in this content series is about culture and about how during the golden era of Black advertising, there was a collective empowerment
Right.
that people were feeling, likely because we were in the 1960s and the 70s, 80s, etc. Do you feel like there are any similarities to today's culture within agencies, specifically within the multicultural and Black communities?
Actually, I do. So I unfortunately wasn't a part of that first journey, and
She said, I'm young. I'm real young.
I actually, well, yes, sort of, but not really. So I missed that particular part of coming into industry. But when I did land in industry, you knew and heard about all the pioneers and all the people that were real influencers for the people that were now coming into some of the leadership positions and some of the senior roles. What I think has happened now, there has been a resurgence. There is this different feel and vibe of having your voices heard.
Right.
A lot of it has to do with social media, but a lot of it has to do with folks really understanding the respect of the work that was done before them and really grabbing hold of it and
Definitely.
saying like we're here, we have been here, we have been contributing, and they're taking that pride in that work that was done by the folks before them and actually lifting it back up and saying if they can do it, we know we can do it, and we can do it in a different way, but it's just going to be just as powerful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We've actually had the opportunity to speak to quite a few of those pioneers on this series for Black History Month, and I must say it's almost like speaking to a peer. So
Right.
like I know I have to respect them for where they've come from, but it just sounds so familiar. A lot of the stories that they're telling.
Yes.
So that's been exciting. Speaking of pioneers, though, we have quite a few multicultural agencies that are considered to be pioneers in this space. Specifically, we have Burrell, we have Carol H. Williams Advertising, and we also have Uniworld.
Right.
But they've stuck around for quite a long time,
Right.
which has been a feat in itself. Can you give any insight based on what you've seen, what you've heard, as to why they may have lasted so long?
So I think part of why they've lasted so long is because they have an insight and can tap into the voice of that community and the voice of having a different level of understanding. Some advertisers do it really well, and some agencies can really get to really close to what it is, the essence of understanding how to market to people in Black community and multicultural communities. However, if an agency specializes it and has people that are ingrained in that culture and come from that culture and really understand the voice of that community, there's a different level that they even bring to the work, and there's a different level of respect that happens that also comes out in the work. And I think that's a major part of why they've endured and lasted so long throughout time, and even have come up against some of the larger agencies in winning work.
I agree with that. Going back to talking about your experience, especially on the D&I side, or diversity and inclusion side of the business, I'm interested to know if you have seen or if you can think of any innovations in that space that have happened, whether it be from the golden era of Black advertising, or even now that we should be celebrating during this Black History Month series.
So from what I can see, and from in the D&I space, a lot of the voices that I think might have kind of thought through things differently, done things differently, they're louder, they're bigger, they're stronger, and they have a lot more support. So I think for the pioneers, while they were able to kind of break through and have agencies and the industry really understand their contribution and what they could bring to the table, what's happening now in the D&I space is that we're now part of a bigger collaborative, right? Industry really recognizes in order to really speak to consumers, they need to understand that. And inside agencies, it's a community. So the community inside needs to have representation, and the D&I space has evolved because of that, because our voices are being heard, understood, and we're able to take action, which I think might not have happened in a different way years past, but I think now the actions that are actually happening are real and are pushing things forward in a really exciting way for D&I.
Couldn't agree more. TASHA, thank you so much for joining us for this series.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all for continuing to watch, and we will be back with more for icons, rock stars, and innovators.
It was great.